Jeff about CCA and talk about, I know, Jeff, you presented previously, I think some of you were at that, were you like a presentation last year? Not all of us were, I wasn't. So I don't know if it's helpful for anyone to have a quick overview. We've talked a little bit about CCA obviously recently, but if it's helpful to have a quick overview of CCA and then any sort of updates or suggestions you might have for the city of Hudson to consider in terms of administrators and such. And I know you had a presentation before, and I don't know if you have one or if you want.
I mean, I thought we'd just have a conversation, might just be easier. So where does Hudson stand? Did Hudson pass a local law? I think we did not yet, right? No. All right, so my recommendation is just to absolutely pass the local law. I think I've said that before too. There's no obligation to do it. That at least is, requires little effort. What would be described and just in my background, say for folks, I am coming from, in the capacity I'm here, I'm coming from Saratoga today. I was at the Clean Energy Communities gathering of outreach coordinators. So I serve under a subcontract to NYSERDA as a state resource to help municipalities understand what community choice aggregation is. And so just general advice, I am by nonprofits. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit that's been in New York for 27 years. And for the last 5 years, we've been involved with one of the administrators supporting CCA programs in the Hudson Valley. That is, been able to maintain, separation for just advising generally on what CCA is and helping communities determine if it's something they should do. So it's really in that capacity, just on sort of a state resource. Particularly, I mean, it is one of the most significant actions. I just had it so heavily reinforced how intensely, by comparison to all other actions that a municipality could take, it is the most powerful thing that a municipality can do in helping the state meet its goals for greenhouse gas emission reductions. And what it is in a nutshell, if you're not familiar, is it builds on the same thing that every utility customer has been able to do since the 1990s. Every utility customer could, because of deregulation, where the utility companies, Central Hudson, National Grid, all of them, they're just delivery companies because of deregulation, meaning they can't make money on, they can't own generation sources, nor can they make money on giving those products of the generation sources, the electrons, in this case for electricity, to the transmission grid to be distributed to customers. So there is a whole marketplace that's been established. Viridian, Constellation, companies we just talked about earlier on, are one of the dozens of companies that have at various times registered to be energy supply companies or ESCOs in New York State, to give individuals and sometimes municipalities the ability to designate what their sourcing would be. And they can do it for typically 2 reasons: either to look for better prices that they could get from the alternative, which I'll talk about in a second, or to support a particular generation source, in particular renewables. Green Mountain Energy is one of the most widely known ESCOs that provide that service for direct access to renewables, not necessarily from New York State sources. So, but deregulation did establish this competitive marketplace, but it also established a default condition, an opt-out condition back in the 90s, where if a customer does not go into the private marketplace, then the local utility makes a choice for them. Because most people are in that condition, many people don't realize that they don't have the monopoly that they think they have, that is a pass-through cost for them. Over the last 20-odd years, since deregulation in that private marketplace, many of the companies have operated. There are many good companies, but there are also a lot of really stinkers out there. There is a lot of really well-earned distrust in the energy marketplace because of the activities of many of those stinkers that have used many terrible practices with people. Contracts that had fine prints where it was fixed for a period and then balloon rates that went crazy, doing targeting of vulnerable populations, senior citizens, and English as second language community members, deceptive practices going door to door, pretending to be the utility to get people's account numbers, lots of bad stuff out there. So that it's led to a hesitancy by people to wanted to get involved in this. through my experiences of supporting programs in this, I found that most people have either had their own bad experience or know somebody who's had a bad experience. It's that prolific. And so coupled with, I'm building upon that hesitation that people have to take advantage of what is an opportunity they can do. There is a presiding interest, and interestingly, and I'm sure you guys are quite aware of this, regardless of people's political affiliations or leanings, there is generally a 75+% interest and willingness to support renewables in the US, generally across population. But you couple that against how many people actually act into that private marketplace to do so, or do a private arrangement for like solar on their home or business, or something that is different than what we're talking about is community solar, which is something separate from this supply decision. There's a really big gap. It's 10 to 15% of the population in the community typically does something around a private contract, and maybe only half of them are doing it for renewables. So there's like a 60% gap, 60% between people, what they want to do and what they actually do. So in comes community choice aggregation. The state allowed it in 2016 for largely 3 reasons, but I'd like to tack in a 4th. The 3 reasons are what it is. It builds on that same private marketplace decision. It's not a subsidized program. It's a state-enabled program. It's not a state program. It was allowed by a Public Service Commission regulatory order that defined how the program must be done, and the Public Service Commission oversees it. But to boil it down to a simple phrase, it's a buying club that a municipality can establish through a local law and exploration and education to determine if it makes sense to offer this as really like a buying club for all of the community members within the municipal borders. It's a cost competitive advantage. The idea of a buying club like Costco or BJ's Wholesale is that you power numbers, you have leverage. The suppliers bid aggressively because they want to be they want to provide service to that pool. And then it's similar to the Costco model, you get a premium product for a really good price. So number 2 is you get a really good rate, and you can fix a rate for an extended period, which has more advantages too, just the certainty of a rate for renewables. And it's been the state's focus to support New York State-based renewables too. So kind of like a localism, regional benefit as well. But third and not least of all, actually what I've found is most widely appreciated by a lot of audiences, the majority of audiences, is the consumer protection aspect of it. The state has heard the complaints about those bad actors in the energy marketplace. So this municipal-led buying club, coupled with the administrator that serves as their guide or Sherpa to navigate the program to see if it makes sense and then to help them with it if they want to go forward, is basically structured to be very transparent, requires a significant amount of outreach, and to be a time-limited program that is very flat and understandable. So it's fixed rate for an extended period of time. 18 months to 3 years has been the normal fixed rate contract that has the ability to be very competitive with the alternative, which is a predominantly fossil-based variable rate from the utility. So it can deliver this overlapping win-win-win benefit to communities. It is, far and away the most, as I mentioned, the most powerful thing that municipalities can do in terms of delivering on greenhouse gas goals statewide. And it is, it is active. There's been hiccups along the way. There's been challenges, but nothing terribly significant. This idea of this program, which came out of the state's initiative to not just invest in the crappy old grid that we have. Back in 2012, 2013, the state looked at the $80 billion investment to keep the largely inefficient, largely vulnerable grid, and charged all of the players through the Reforming the Energy Vision process to come up with ideas about how we could get towards the smart grid, the newer, the more distributed grid, the more renewable based grid that we wanted. And this is, along with others, but this is the current most powerful mechanism to do so. And it is, with the other changes that are happening and will happen, the fourth part of this that I love so much, and it's very biased because it's the part I do as a nonprofit, is the education piece. I just think that it's on top of the potential cost benefit savings and the premium products of offering renewables, with the transparency and sort of like the fact that they reduce the decision-making hurdles that people have, kind of take them away, offer them a package offering it with the education, giving them a resource to help them navigate the changes that are happening and will happen is nothing to sneeze at. I think it's a really important thing to do. And so the steps that I did share in a previous presentation, there's like 13 steps to go from 0 to a fully live program. Half of them you can do without ever committing to launch a program. Those first half include passing a local law, choosing how to administer the program, which for most communities involves picking an approved administrator who is filed with the Public Service Commission. But then it also includes an outreach and education phase to educate the people about what you're exploring to see if it makes sense, which I think has a benefit all on of its own, coupled with the other things that you're probably doing within a community. Because to do the outreach and education properly, the organization takes on the burden, and it really is there's no direct cost to the municipality to do the program, and there's no direct burden. The way that the regulatory order is structured, the burden is on the administrator to do that. And so that's how I'm involved in those other programs in the Central Hudson and Orange and Rockland territories. That we're the nonprofit that was picked to help with that outreach effort, but we don't do it alone. We do it through partnership. So it is a really good opportunity to engage with the community, to educate them more broadly about things that are happening, which I think is great. And then if after those steps, including the potential design of a request for proposals, if the market makes sense, and the market has been crazy, so sometimes it doesn't always make sense, but it has made sense many times in the last 5 to 6 years. And if it makes sense for a particular community to go forward, they have the ability to say, let's proceed. And if they want to, they don't have to proceed. Right up through issuing a request for proposals, receiving bids, and seeing if it meets the criteria, a community can still say no. So it's so, user friendly from that perspective. It is surprising, and there will be this concern expressed by municipal leadership, like, why should we do this? Why should we make a new opt-out decision for our community members? One, I'd like to emphasize, that's why I started by saying there is an existing opt-out condition in place. We are already in an opt-out condition established by deregulation. What this program does, it just replaces a state mandated opt-out condition where we have no voice in the decision made for where the power comes from, to a local one, much closer to the community members. And coupled with that is, with the local decision power, the ability to, again, reduce decision-making hurdles, to offer people something that is very beneficial, truly is a public benefit. Vetting through the opportunities that are out there, so you kind of optimize the choices that are out there, and you protect them from mistakes in the marketplace, and you protect them from the actor doing anything bad to them. And so I think it's for me, it's a kind of an elegantly, beautifully designed program that can deliver real benefits. And it does take education, because you will have municipal leaders saying, why should we do this? The reason is you're just switching to a local opt-out, you're optimizing and you're protecting your community members to give them something that they want, remembering that big gap between what I believe is true. The surveys say people want to support renewables, and all the hurdles that go between them actually doing it. This makes it easy.
On the best actor front, what's like the Socrates case study of like so my understanding is their power provider in the CCA like reneged on their contract, and then there's like litigation, and it just seems like a mess. Is there like a best practice to not end up in that situation, or?
Yeah, that's situations that situation, just we'll kind of back out. No, absolutely, no, it's great. No, it's important. I didn't want to kind of introduce it without it being asked about it, but so that was a contract that it was a 3-year contract with an organization called Columbia Utilities.
Yeah.
And they start, I was eating nuts in the car, and they're coming to get me. They started into a 3-year contract that was supposed to run through 2024.
Yeah.
That happened when the contract coincided, now from a Socrates perspective, right with September 2021, right when Central Hudson's billing kerfuffle blew up. So there was a lot of confounding about what happened with Central Hudson's billing challenges and the Seascape program, which has been proven by the Public Service Commission through a report that they released in December 2022, that there was absolutely Central Hudson's errors had nothing to do with anything but Central Hudson. But what that program also coincided with was the return out of the pandemic and the invasion of Ukraine. So the utility markets went absolutely nuts. At one point in the midst of the contract, the first year of the contract, Central Hudson's rate went up to 22 cents per kilowatt hour, which is really extreme, but it was indicative of the high utility rate. So it was 3 times pretty much what we've been seeing over previous years in terms of supply rates. So because of that, there was monetary reasons that Columbia Utilities wanted to get out of their contract. And they were prevented from doing so. So there truly is a continuation of the good news story about what CCA is all about. The administrator of the program continued to act as a champion for the communities. And they did, in partnership with the communities, receive an injunction to prevent them from getting out of their contract. They were trying to blame, Columbia Utilities was trying to blame Central Hudson's billing errors for their excuse to get out of the contract, when I'll say it's my opinion.
It's purely a rate.
It was an economic thing that they had a hedge that they could sell, and they probably needed to buy some at the higher market rates. So but they found a backdoor. They found that by defaulting, that there was a news article, I think in the Freeman, that suggested that they were, basically went bankrupt. They were not a financially viable company, which is not true. They were vetted to be a very financially viable company, but they were a bad actor. They found out by defaulting on their payment to the New York Independent System Operator that they would be kicked out of New York without having to go bankrupt. They just couldn't operate in New York anymore, and that took them out of the contract. So they found a way out. The worst thing that happened, I mean, it was not good in terms of the validity, but there was protections continued to be offered by the administrator, and very frank and very frequent communications and partnership with all of the partner municipalities. They all joined in, nearly all, in the legal action that continues. But the worst outcome was that everyone just went back to the original default. It wasn't like anyone had any additional payments or penalties or anything else. Everyone was still suffering through the billing challenges that Central Hudson is still resolving, which confounded the whole issue. But there was a lot going on that created a sense of that. But Saugerties and town and village now are in a relaunch of the program. So in terms of updates that I didn't share, they're very active in the Hudson Valley as of the spring of this year. I think it's 8 communities in Rockland County. We're the first to go. Westchester relaunched, I think, into its 4th contract, almost 24 communities. And we're in the transition to a launch of 12 communities in Central Hudson territory, which includes the village and town of Saugerties and Red Hook and not Clinton, but New Paltz, Marbletown, and others. And they're happy with it. And they are offering 3 rates to the community members. There's 100% renewable, which is all New York State renewable sourced power. There's a 50-50, with the powerful demand that these programs have. Last year, CCA programs were responsible for 40% of all the renewables demand within the state. So because of a pricing concern, the state is allowing a 50% renewables from New York State rate, 50% renewables from out of the state. So it's actually 100%, but only 50% of it is from in the state. And then there is a standard rate option, which is normal. It's normal that these programs offer more than one rate as a choice, because the name of the program is Community Choice Aggregation. So it is a new choice around electricity rates, and within the rate choices offered, there's more than one. So people have an additional choice, adding to the choice set that they had. It doesn't take anything away from them. I'm very long-winded. I'm sorry. I speak in like pages these days.
Could you talk more about some of the good players in this space? And we're just talking about Mega. You and I have talked about Jewel.
Oh, those are the administrators, yeah.
As administrators, and sort of give us a lay of the land a little bit.
Yeah, so there are, well, so I was curious, because last time I spoke to Mega, as I understand it, there are 5 approved administrators in the state right now. A 6th is on the way, I think, right now, if I count numbers correctly. All have been good actors, all the administrators, true to what they do. They're just an evolving model. So there is statewide, there are 2 companies that are operating. One is called Good Energy, based in New York City. And they have active programs in and around the Hudson Valley as well. And then there's Jewel, Joule. They're based in Westchester. And they have quite a few, multiple dozens of active CCA programs, including the city of Rochester. Then there is an administrator just in Westchester. It used to be called Westchester Power, but now it's part of Sustainable Westchester. And they're just operating within Westchester borders. There is Mega, which was operating largely upstate. Kind of if you drew a line across from Binghamton to Albany, it was kind of that and above. They had active programs, but last I heard, the update was that they were decided for a number of reasons to partner with Jewel, actually, into trying to launch a program around the Albany area. And last time I spoke to them, they said they weren't actively pursuing CCA programs. But
Not for, yeah, that's true, not for the residential part, but for the municipality.
which has been their old business model for
Exactly,
years and
yeah.
years. They've done
Yeah.
municipal aggregation.
Yeah.
And then there's one that is focused on just community solar, which is something that is parallel to what we've been talking about in terms of an electricity supply buying card. Called Ampion. It's one of the community solar companies, but we don't know about what's happening with community solar under the CCA umbrella. That's a long conversation. And then there's a group that's supporting Kingston's effort, the Mid-Hudson Energy Transition, which are not official yet, as far as I understand, but they are working on their implementation plan to be approved. And their focus is Kingston, but that it won't just be Kingston likely in future years.
So so I definitely understand that Mega, for example, could easily work with the city of Hudson, right? In terms of becoming part of an aggregate, a community aggregate program. But so who is working would do the residential wing of this? Which ones?
All of
What you
those,
just
except for the
Except
one doing
Mega.
community solar, then Mega, so we don't know what their status.
Right,
All of them, these CCA programs are all about pretty much everyone in a municipal border.
okay,
The eligible customers, the automatically included customers are all residential.
Yeah.
For the most part, and small commercial. But there's a number of categories that are not automatically included. Like heat participants, large account holders, like if the fire station would not be included automatically because it has a demand meter. People on time of use, people with blocks on their account that they place themselves, but anybody can join if they want to. No matter their size or designation, if they want to take advantage of the municipal program, if and when it launches, they can, including municipal accounts.
In terms of Hudson and our sort of service area, is Jewel sort of the main
They're
recommendation?
the most active and doing the most, and seem to be the most forward leaning in terms of supporting renewables as their focus. Good Energy is in the area too, it should be spoken to. That time,
no, I mean, what I
I
guess
can lull people to sleep with my magic words.
what I'm trying to ascertain here is, do you need to, so you could pass a law that says we want to participate to do a CCA for the city of Hudson. But it seems like the city of Hudson itself would have a somewhat different relationship, if you will, with the administrator because of the fact that almost every single property is on a demand meter. So it wouldn't be able necessarily to participate. Is that what I'm hearing?
And
Possibly?
they could if they wanted to, and it's common that they don't have automatically included accounts, and they frequently often have their own third-party contract. And so that category, if you have a third-party contract, you're not automatically included, you're not kicked out of your contract.
Right,
But many people are beyond the penalty period, they can end it and join if they want to. It's
Okay.
possible for municipalities too, but this is something that municipalities do for their community members.
Yeah.
It's not something they're primarily motivated for their own accounts at all. This is something that they see as a benefit to the community members.
I get that, but I also do think that we are very large users. So, if you wanna, big bang for your buck is also to address big users.
And you get that coupling too, that they don't often feel justified with their large accounts. While they do for group purchasing for the municipal accounts, they'll typically not do renewable support because it's typically more expensive. Even though they're group purchasing, they don't have a lot of leverage as much as you can have through a CCA program. where you bring all these
No, make
accounts
that-
together. So so a number of municipalities that have been part of the programs have switched their accounts into the program. So they're saying, hey, we're now paying a good rate and it's 100% renewable that we're paying for.
Okay,
But passing the local law is just saying is really, going through the pain of having the conversations, the public meetings, the hearings, but just, being able to educate people, saying, hey, the grid's evolving, there's opportunities that are coming, they're here now, there's more opportunities coming. And prepping them and saying that this is just part of the exploration. It's basically giving the city the tool to do something. They don't have to take the tool out of the toolbox, but get the tool and know what's out there.
I mean, I'm looking at the Albany law, which, I mean, I'm guessing these laws probably all are pretty boilerplate in terms of,
Yeah, they are very, very similar.
I imagine they
It's
are.
2 pages long and
This one's pretty straightforward. Probably almost cut and paste.
yeah, and that's why it's structured on the template that's on the NYSERDA website.
Right, that makes
It's
a
made
lot of
exactly
sense.
for that purpose.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there one in particular municipality that you think has very exemplary in terms of their local law language?
No, they're all so similar.
Similar.
Yeah, you just don't want to restrict yourself. Some have done the opposite, kind of a little bit more restrictive than they need to be. Like CCA can be used for gas. No municipality I know is using it for gas because most municipalities and us are in it to get away from fossil, so.
Right.
But you don't restrict yourself. Like one municipality took it out because they wanted to make a statement to their law. But don't be restricted. Just, give yourself the most
And a lot of people do use
applicable
that
tool.
as well as electric, obviously.
Mhm. And I'm happy to help with any, presentation, questioning, answering, if you want to go before the city council to educate them or to go through the public Q&A on that, I'm a resource that can help with that.
Remind me, who do you work for then? Who's your?
In essence, I'm working for the state. In essence.
You work for the
I
state.
mean, I'm a contractor, my nonprofit is contracted to be a CCA resource to help
Okay,
communities go through the Clean Energy Communities Program, and CTA is a very significant high impact action out there.
got it.
So it's an objective resource to help.
Yeah, which I think nicer to heard.
Yeah, okay, cool. That's useful.
I'm not of the state,
What's that?
I'm not of the state, not directly,
Not of
but
the
a
state.
contractor supporting the state program. Let's make that clear for the recording.
Okay.
Michael, is there anything from the mayor's office that you've been thinking about related to this, or any questions that?
No, I think
We should be as-
we're well equipped. It is up to the council to take the next step.
And Tom's not.
No, Tom won't be here today.
Like I said, if you want me to come or be on video for questions up from the council, happy to do it.
When is the next legal committee?
Tomorrow, actually,
Oh, okay, so it's the first Wednesday?
first Wednesday of the month, yeah.
I hope this was helpful.
So maybe, oh, yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
My pleasure.
Rich, do you have any questions?
Yeah, maybe you could follow up on this, okay.
Rich is our chair of the CAC.
Right.
I'm sure said.
I mean, I'm willing to